Hey there guys, and in this video I'm going to be showing off my build for the Tenora. Now this build, is going to be, compared to my other builds, it's going to be a little bit more advanced, that reason being for, the reason I have a mod in here called Vital Sense. Now this mod's a little hard to get. The only way I've been able to get it is from doing, by like destroying containers in the void, and that takes a while. It's very luck based. It's very dependent on RNG. Very hard. You need to do a lot of missions. And after like 10 missions of doing that, open up containers, I eventually got it. So it's gonna be kind of a hard mod to get. So I'm not expecting a lot of newer players to have it, but it is a mod that you should be looking towards. And if you don't have this mod, it won't really it will probably affect the build, but it won't be as it won't be as effective as it would as you would see in this video. But it would make it so that it doesn't really matter if you don't have it. It'll just make it so that it's gonna be less effective. Now you could probably, in place of this, you could probably instead of having a crit build, instead you could probably put in maybe some more, maybe faster hands if you do want to actually faster hands and make the reload quicker, and maybe an extra toxin mod, or maybe an extra, like maybe something like Stormbridge or something to increase the electricity. So you increase your corrosive damage, which means overall you're going to be increasing your damage to be more effective and doing a lot more damage. So that's something you can do if you don't have the Vital Sense. But if you have Vital Sense, I would recommend putting it in and using it. Also saying that, another good thing to do is probably to replace Point Strike. Take that away with Vital Sense because they kind of work together, and make this a full-on, what do you call it, status build. So you can probably do that if you don't have Vital Sense. And but if you have Vital Sense, I'll recommend this build that I'm showing you right now. So for the Tenora, this is a Former 1 build for this build. You could probably make a Former 2 or 3. And if you do have this mod as well, it's also mod. It's also I got it from the same way as I got Vital Sense. Split chambers. You can probably put that on if you do. That'll probably be a 3 Former build. So you would probably have to put a lot into this weapon if you did want to do that. So as you can see, it takes a 15 capacity, so it's quite a lot. If you don't want to do that, you can probably put on maybe like where is it? It's a wildfire. I don't know if it's here. You can probably put on wildfire or something. Or maybe faster hands. That would probably be a lot more easier mod to put in. Maybe like that make it probably a 2 Former build, because faster hands probably it takes 7 capacity, so it'd probably be pretty easy to do as well. But yeah, that's what you could do for that. But this build, I think this build is pretty good. It's pretty alright. And this build we're showing off. I don't think it really needs any more building on, but you can do that if you want. In all honesty, I don't really spend that much more form on this weapon. I don't really put that much form with most weapons because, again, newer player, I don't have I don't have like unlimited resources to do that kind of stuff. So yeah. And yeah, so that's to have a look at what it does. So if you don't know what the Tenora does, it's basically it's like the Gorgon, except it's not as damage intensive as it, but it has a lot more accuracy. So it means you're going to be getting pretty much most of your hits onto the enemies as long as they're standing still, or if you're pretty accurate. And this gun's very accurate. It's very good. And that's its like whole entire thing, to be basically a more accurate Gorgon, in that kind of sense. So yeah. And another thing it does is that it also has an alt fire, which is called charge. And basically what that does is basically you press your secondary fire, which I have is on your third mouse button, which is the little scroll thing. This thing right here where you basically scroll. If you press onto that, that basically is your third mouse key. I've made it that because it's a lot easier, because it's a lot easier to switch between, and I just find it a lot more usable and easy to actually use, and it's just very good. And I've seen people use your second fire onto keys. I wouldn't recommend that. That's not really that good. Again, most of the keys where it's very close and a lot more usable are kind of like all up in use. So the best thing to do is probably put it onto your mouse, and your third mouse key, which is your scroll thing, is probably best in my opinion. So that's what I'd recommend. And also, it's very good for this build as well, or for this weapon as well, because you're going to need a lot of accuracy for the charge part of this weapon, because that needs some extreme accuracy. Because to make it really good and actually do heaps of damage, you need to get headshots onto enemies, which I'll show you later in the video. And that's pretty much it. And to talking about the auto fire, this is what I mainly use as well, and we're mainly talking about. But again, most of the things I say are positive, and some of the things you kind of like need to increase and why I increase it. Also apply to this as well. It's pretty much the exact same. Except it's a little different on fire, but a lot of the things that increase like critical chance, critical multiplier, and corrosive, all that kind of stuff, all apply to the charge as well. So I won't be talking about the charge because it's pretty much the exact same thing. Just as you can see, it's a little more high compared to this. So yeah. Yeah, so that's to get into the build. So again, accuracy, as I said, very good just compared to the Gorgon. Very good. It's pretty much laser. Really good. The only problem is that the bullets, if you're in close range, they're pretty much a laser. Once they get further and further out, they kind of spread. But again, that spread isn't really that big, and you can still get hits on most enemies. When it first starts firing, it's not gonna be that accurate at all. It's actually gonna be it's very hard to hit enemies. But once it gets to its full speed, it will pretty much just be a laser. You'll be getting most of the hits on. So, but again, like I said before, that comparison when I said it, the spread's gonna be, it's still gonna spread, but it won't be that big. That was for at its most quickest. It's still gonna be spread, but it's at a very longer range, and it's gonna be a lot less. What do you say? A lot less crazy as compared to when you first start firing, and also a lot more when compared to the Gorgon. So yeah, I mean a lot less. That's pretty much it. Then we have critical chance about 62.5%. Very good. You're going to be pretty much proccing critical chance a lot of the time with this weapon. About every second damage multiplier thing that comes up, it's going to be critical. It's really good, and the critical chance is amazing on this. And the one time I'm going to talk about, charge by one of the times is the critical chances. You're pretty much going to be getting a critical chance if you're aiming at the head 100% of the time. It's the critical chance is just really good. It's amazing, and it makes it very viable when you're using the charge to aim for the heads, because you're going to be getting unbelievable amounts of damage, like taking chunks off enemies. It's just really good for when the critical chance, critical multiplier, very good for the charge. And talking about the critical multiplier, that's against the critical multiplier. That's about 5.6 times, and it's very good. That's very good. You're going to be doing heaps of damage, heaps stacks of damage. Very good for aiming at the head. You'll be doing heaps of damage. Aiming at the weak spots, which most enemies have. Again, if this is a very good weapon to go with Banshee. Any crit builds really good to go with Banshee, because you can see the positions of where the critical spots are. It means you can be doing the most damage if you aim there. So it's very good with the critical multiplier. You do really good amounts of damage. Very high, very good. Good to aim at heads and critical spots if you have a Banshee on your team, or if you are a Banshee. And then we have the fire rate. Now this is this also one thing is a little different from this is the charge rate. They pretty much act the same. This one's less than this, just because it basically says basically shows that the charge rate is gonna take less time to actually charge up. It takes about like a second to charge up, so you fire pretty quickly, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So you can fire more shots off, and it's a lot more manageable than like the really slow charge rate you had before, which was about like 2 to 3 seconds. So it's I kind of like the charge rate. Very good for this weapon, for this build. And it basically means you can fire onto those enemies it's a lot more, and it's very good, because that means, saying if you're in a position and you want to take out like a heavy target, like a heavy gun, grenade bomber, you can charge it before you come, or peek out for like a millisecond, shoot them directly in the head, move out, do heaps of damage to them, and then you'll be taking barely any damage. And again, that's with the grenade bomber. That avoids very far, very slow. I mean, but when you're doing it with a Gorgon, or like with a Gorgon, I mean a Grenier heavy gun, it's gonna be a little different. I'm gonna be taking some damage, but it'll be less damage than when compared to you being out in the middle of nowhere. So, it's very effective. Having really slow charge rate, very good. And also same with the fire rate for the auto. That basically means you're going to be the beginning charge rate, the beginning fire rate, I mean, is going to be very fast. It's going to be like a lot faster than the beginning one, which I hated. I didn't like it. This annoyed the heck out of me. If you see my other builds where I've talked about melee weapons, I hate slow melee weapons. It's the same with slow melee, slow like charge up kind of like auto rifles. I hate them being slow. I prefer them to be fast and then get even more fast. So I like that a lot more. And I just hate this when a weapon, like, when a weapon's ridiculously slow, like, I charge up auto rifle, and it just really annoys me. So that's why I put on a speed trigger to increase that by like 60%, and it's just very good. And you're gonna be doing the speed you'll be getting, you just be firing off heaps of bullets. So, like, there's so many bullets into the enemy's head. It's just so good. It's just I would really recommend putting on speed trigger or a speed increasing mod like Shred here. Again, not as effective, but again, that puncture through is pretty good. So you could probably switch this out with this if you had some extra capacity. Um, and then we also have the mag size, 150. Haven't changed that. I feel like the mag size is pretty manageable. It's quite a lot for this weapon, and I haven't really found the need to change it. Reload, 2.5. I find the reload pretty bearable. I don't really mind it on this weapon. But again, saying that, you can make it so you reload really fast. I would recommend if you're not going to if you don't have vital sense, I would recommend taking these off and switching, as I said before, switching it out with fast hands, and also one of a mod to increase corrosive. But the reason I recommended that is because it's just good to have a reload mod if you have space to put it on and you have nothing else really put there, and you don't have a reload mod on. I would recommend putting a reload mod on, because that basically means you'll be filling up you'll basically be put back into the battle a lot more quicker, and it's just good. Reload mods are pretty good, especially like fast hand, very cheap, very yeah, it's pretty much it's very cheap. It's very bearable. It increases the reload or decreases the reload quite substantially for what it is, for like a beginner's mod. So it's pretty good to put on fast hands if you do want to. Now the status, this is about like 30%, pretty good. It's not as good when compared to other builds I have shown off with status, where the status you'll pretty much be proccing it constantly. With this build, it's going to be proccing a lot. It's going to be proccing quite regularly, but again, it's not going to be ridiculous numbers. It's not going to be proccing 100% of the time. It's only going to be a little bit, but it procs enough so that it will be effective enough to put status build thing, status mods on that kind of stuff. So it's just good to put on there anyway. Then we have the damages. This weapon has got more puncture, which is kind of sad. But again, the difference between the slash and the puncture isn't really that much, and the slash is still pretty high. So this weapon's still pretty effective in that kind of way, in that kind of note. Then we have corrosive at like 70.5. Again, it's not as high as some of the builds I put on. It's still pretty high, and it does add pretty good damage buff to your weapon. And that's pretty much it. Pretty much the same for the charge. Anything else I didn't mention I don't really need, because all the reasonings I have it on this is here as well. So yeah, that's pretty much here. And let's actually go and show off this weapon. Okay, I'll put one in. Okay, we'll put 5 in. We'll have a look how they go. Yes, they are. Okay, let's go show us off the weapon. Okay, let's have a little run up towards them. Now, the best thing to do is probably try and get headshots constantly. Because as you can see there, it can kill them pretty quickly. Now, it's not really as fast of a killer as most other weapons. But again, this weapon is more of a sustained damage weapon. It's not really of a quick killing weapon. And you can see that because with the extreme mag size. Now, again, before I talked about you don't really need a mag mod. Now, most gameplay I've really found it annoying, the mag size, but I can see why you would want to add one. So that's something you could do if you so want to add a mag increasing mod if you want to. But again, I don't really find it that annoying in battle, so I don't really find the need to add one. And I feel like the 150 mag is enough for this weapon. So yeah. And now we're going to show off the alternate fire mode. Okay, so as you can see, this can kill the enemies in about 3 shot, level 85 heavy gunners. But again, saying that you need to get headshots every single time if you do want to, and also has to do crit damage. Again, so saying if you like hit here or something, it's not going to be as much. And as you've seen before, the the crit doesn't proc 100% of the time. It's about, from what I saw then, about 80% of the time it procs. And so it's not that much. It's not really that reliable to actually use the. Let's just grab some ammo to use your charge that much. I don't really like using it. I just prefer to use the auto mode of this. Sorry about that. I prefer to use the auto mode of this weapon. I find it a lot more effective. I find it a lot more usable. A lot more scenarios. I find the need to actually use it. I don't really find that many scenarios to use the charge part of this weapon, and I just think it's not really as important as the auto. So I don't really want to build towards it. But you can if you want. You can if you want. And I don't know. You can if you want. But again, that need to get headshots is for that kind of like single shot charge kind of weapon where it takes time to charge. Not really that. It's not really that rewarding at the time, because to actually get those headshots onto the enemies, it's very hard when compared to the auto mode of this weapon, the auto firing mode of this weapon. The auto firing mode, if you miss shots, it's very forgiving. You can easily just move the angle thing. But when using the charge part of it, it's less forgiving. If you miss, that's pretty much a whole entire chunk of damage you just missed, and that means the enemy can either kill you really quickly. They can decide they have the chance to kill you because you have to charge and that kind of stuff. And I just don't think it's worth using the actual charge part of this weapon. I just don't think that the reward challenge, like against the risk, is that worth it. I think it's just better to use the auto firing mode. But again, if you are pretty good at aiming with this weapon, wrong button. If you're pretty good at aiming this button, you could probably get some pretty good shots off if you're in long range. But again, saying that, it's not really that accurate. It's a little harder to do it. So again, I would recommend when using this. I would recommend when using this weapon to just use the auto mode. You know, it's pretty much the auto mode. I wouldn't use the charge mode. It's not really that worth it in my opinion. The need for you to just get constant headshots, and as you can see there, it's not really that responsible for the charge. I just don't think it's really that worth it for you to risk that much, and the chances of you missing are very high, and also the chances for you not getting a crit chance, again, not high for you to like not get a crit chance, but there's still a chance. And when compared to this, missing like a crit chance not proccing isn't really that important, because you have so many bullets firing at them and so many chances for the crit to actually come in. So that's probably like that's why I put the crit build in this, because just for the auto mode, because there's a lot more chances for the crit to actually proc than when compared to the charge, because the charge is, you know, it's because it's what most weapons, if they fire auto, are a lot better to have a crit build with, because the crit chance is just so much more higher, because you're firing so many more bullets into an enemy's head. So that means the crit chance is going to be a lot higher, even if the crit chance is like 30% more higher. So I don't know. I don't really like the charge, but you can use it if you want. I wouldn't recommend it though. And yeah, I'm pretty much just gonna end the video here. And yeah, just gonna end it now. Okay, see ya.